Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Thank you for tuning in. Today, we are very excited to have Victor Viggiani and Stephen Bassett and the rest of our UFOB team as well. We're looking forward to possibly having Christopher Sharp from Liberation Times on and Gunter Hofer, who helped investigate the Ariel School case. They are not here yet, but the others are. So without further ado, I'll bring on our UFOB team. Adam, hey, how you doing?
Hello, always great to be here.
Excellent, good to see you. And Nigel, how are you doing?
Good, guys. Happy to be on, as always.
Excellent.
Excited.
Excellent, thank you, Nigel. And of course, our founder of UFOB, Ramsey. Hey, how you doing?
Hello. How are you doing? I'm fine.
Good to see you. And without further ado, of course, we'll bring on Victor Viggiani. Hello, Victor. How are you?
Just fine. Thank you very much, guys, for having me on. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you for being here. And the one, the only, Stephen Bassett. How are you doing?
I'm still the only. Nothing much has changed. Only.
It's great. It's great to have you on.
I thought you said the one and the lonely. No. Yeah. Look, it's good to be with you guys, and let's keep the faith, move forward, and
we'll do that.
Avoid getting into a war with Russia if we can avoid it.
Oh man, that's the last thing we need, right? Well, today is going to be a top of mind for both Steve and Victor. We want to know what's on the top of their minds as disclosure activists of over 25 years. So let's start with Victor and then we'll go to Steve. So Victor, what's on the top of your mind in disclosure activism?
Well, first of all, there's the assumption that I have a mind. I do. No, it's seriously though. There's it's almost like trying to capture waves on a beach. It seems that since 2017, that the waves just keep on crashing onto the shore. And without, they're just being relentless. And every month, every week, almost every single day, at some point, something new happens. So I think the first thing that's on my mind is the incessant way this issue has hit the UFO UAP research community, to be specific, and in general, how it's hit the media. And also to how it's hit the international community, just with this constant onslaught of information that we have to sift through all of the time. And I should add, too, that this information is so different than what's come before 2017, that it is almost impossible to be able to deny or question most of what's been hitting the shores since 2017. It's just become relentless. So that's the first thing that's on my mind. I guess the second thing that's on my mind is this whole dichotomy between how the United States of America seems to be framing this issue with respect to the recent hearing that happened. We can get into that a bit later, as opposed to how some of the people in the international community are trying to frame the issue in a much different way, with a third component being individuals who seem to want to shy away from this whole national security issue that seems to be plaguing this matter, in a way that if the entire international community buys into the national security problems of this issue of UAP it takes hold, we're going to be in big trouble, because framing this issue as a national security situation with respect to how the U.S. looks at it could be very, very problematic for the global community in the future. So those are two of the things, or three things, that are on my mind with respect to this issue.
Excellent. Steve?
One of the things that I think needs to be noted is that this is not 1969. This is 2022. There's been some technological developments, communication-wise, in the last 20 years. And so there are a lot of older members of our political class and of our military intelligence class, who, many of which have experienced a situation where their fully grown daughters in their late 20s have suddenly discovered that a couple of naked photos they had put on the internet 18 years earlier are still there. And they're having a huge problem dealing with that, and they're very upset. There are millions of these cases now out there where people have discovered that when you put something on the internet 15 years later, it's still there, all right? In other words, the internet is forever. There are companies that say they can clean up the internet. In other words, they'll get all your stuff off. They're lying. So why is this important? Here's why it's important, is that since about 2000, all the things that we've been doing and saying and writing about and all that stuff, it was on the net. The internet was the best thing that ever happened to the disclosure movement. It's still there. It's not going anywhere, right? They're still looking for the report from Project Sign. They haven't found it. Apparently they burned it or something, and there's no copies, and it's gone. We'll never see that. In the last 5 years, my God, everything that's poured out, all of these developments are inculcated into the internet and social media, YouTube mini docs, full docs, podcast archives, and on and on and on. Everything that Luis Elizondo has ever said, which is 400,000 words at least by now, and it's all on the line, and it's going to be there probably for the rest of the century. Why is that important? Simple. What do you do if you're the Air Force or you're the Pentagon and you want to hold a press conference like they did in 1997, just before the Roswell 50th anniversary, where John Haynes came out, a colonel, and as serious as he could be, reiterated that it was a mogul balloon and the bodies were mistaken for crash test dummies that were dropped out of an airplane 5 years later wearing Air Force uniforms. That was 1997. They actually did that. That press conference took place. Maureen Dowd, the New York Times columnist, was there. She wrote a blistering column about that after, saying, "You guys have got your head completely up your arse." She hadn't written anything since. And there are some films, you can sort of find that. It's on YouTube. You can find this momentous press conference. One of the most embarrassing things the Pentagon and anybody associated with the Air Force ever did. They'll never live it down. This isn't 1969. Everything is now on the net. And so anybody inside the military intelligence community that has got some clever plan up their sleeve about how they're going to finesse this whole thing, and a couple of years from now, we will have all forgotten about it. It was just one of those little things that happened, a little disturbance in the force, people got worked up, but it's not, we really don't understand it yet, and there's nothing to be really all worked up about. That's over. That's done. The internet right now, in all of its majesty, all 400,000 podcasts, another 10,000 new websites, the new media operations, the YouTube universe, it's all sitting there ready to pounce on the military intelligence complex and rip it to pieces if it decides that it's not going to finish the job. This is what I note, and I'm very pleased about. All of us have made a little contribution there, some a lot more than others. But the internet is ultimately the final nail in the coffin of the truth embargo, in a sense. They know that. They're responding to that. They're even responding to the internet. They're participating in it. Pretty soon, you're going to have DoD people coming on your podcast, wanting to get on, get their items out there, so they're not looked to be not playing ball. Some secretary, associate secretary, deputy of national security for whatever the hell, they're going to be on these podcasts. So this is the final days. The only problem is the world keeps dishing up crises, bizarreness, nutsness, and the United States is going through a rather awkward period where every pretty much evil mentality, which has always been there, has all emerged all at once, right? Like everybody at once decided to start walking into every restaurant in the country and light up a cigarette because it's been made okay now. You can all smoke anywhere you want to, right? Wherever you are. We always had smokers, but now they're all back in the restaurants. They're in schools. The teachers are smoking. It's like that. Every pretty much regressive political concept and worldview in the United States has reemerged and trying to take power all at the same time. I didn't see that coming. It's a little irritating, and it's crowding our issue off the table. So we're going to have to weather that storm. It's not as bad in Canada, thank God. So if we completely collapse down here and become a completely racist national security state, Canada, take over, please. Finish the job. Thank you very much. But with any luck, we'll get through this. But it's it, among other things. Oh yeah, the war, that war, Putin's war, his last hurrah, his swan song, meaning I'm not leaving this planet. If I have to leave this planet, I'm taking everybody with me. These things are preventing us from moving forward with the hearings. The hearings are ready to go. They've been ready to go for months. They could be called like that. Oh, and there's another hearing going on, the insurrection thing. We had an insurrection. Did you notice that? Have you had an insurrection lately? You almost had a thing with like Quebec. I remember that got interesting, but we've gone past that. Okay. We've got 6 states that are Quebec. All of them want to go to war right now or succeed or whatever the hell. So that, hopefully, we're going to have to deal with that. But, you know, this issue is more important than all of that stuff. Way more important than all that stuff. And there's plenty of people that get that. And they're going to go, you know, screw this and screw that and screw the Supreme Court, screw the war in Europe, hell with the white nationalists, let them march all over Boston, we don't care. We're going to end the truth embargo, and we're going to learn that we're not alone in the universe. And that's actually pretty cool.
Impressive indeed. Victor, go ahead. I look like you were going to say something.
No, it's just you know, Steve, as usual, hits the nail on the head every time he does some sort of encapsulation of the larger perspective of this issue. The one thing that I think he didn't mention is what seems to be happening here, and I know Steve will probably reflect this issue himself, that all of the stuff that's come down over the past, let's just take 8 months, okay? It doesn't matter the time frame, really. But what seems to be happening is that all of this information, like I said earlier, sort of hitting the shores with these waves of new revelations. You know, Steve said Luis Elizondo has articulated 400,000 words on this. Chris Mellon is front and center about this issue. Avril Haines, in an interview, actually mentioned the word extraterrestrial in her interview at the National Library. So these kinds of things are happening. And what I see occurring is that everyone who has not been plugged into this information, and some who have been partially plugged into this, are looking at this stuff as, holy, you're saying what? How long has this been going on, and why don't we know about it? This is all new information to me, to us. I wonder what Andre Carson, the one of the chairman of the committee, is this all new information for him? Why is Adam Schiff on this committee to begin some sort of hearings? Is this new information for him? Has he had any background at all in this? So the question that I have is, how long have some of these individuals who appear to be just getting involved in this issue on the surface, how long have they actually known about this stuff? And that's an unanswered question in my mind. And if we get the answer to that question, we're going to realize that all the stuff that Steve just talked about, the history back and, you know, with respect to, you know, the initial hearings way back when Gerald Ford asked for the hearings and got something going on, all that historical information is sort of under pressure just to explode in the faces of all these individuals who think this stuff is all new. That's what really ticks me off. Is that some of these individuals who are becoming aware of this information, journalists, some politicians, are saying, this is all new to me. So they've been asleep. They've had their heads up their rectal cavities for 75 years. And that's problematic when people think that this stuff is all new information. So we have to deal with that issue and bring these people up to speed in the right way so that they get a clear perspective that not only are these UAP real, but we are being engaged by an off-world set series multiplicity of civilizations. And those two ideas, UAPs are real and the off-world situation, are two, at this point, polemic ideas that the media and the military are yet to deal with. And once those two things converge, the UAP reality and the ET presence, once those two issues converge into a single issue, then we'll know we're getting somewhere. And that's one of the core issues about how I think things have begun to evolve after 2017.
I'd also like to throw in there that just trying to imagine what it's going to be like when not only all that comes out, what you both just clearly said and stated, but when they connect the dots and say, oh, wait a minute, what about all these abductees? Is that really going on? And then on top of that, go ahead.
Let me say something about that's the non sequitur at this point. That I'm afraid, and I believe, and I feel very passionate about the issue that you just mentioned. I'm very passionate about it, but I think we have to be cautious in recognizing that could be down the road something very, very instrumental. But I think it's, at this point, to be realistic, I think it's too soon to inject that issue just yet. As necessary as it is, by the way, I think we have to be very cautious of how we inject that issue into the whole narrative. Absolutely,
because that is what I want to call it. Just a big pile of fireworks ready to explode. It's and again, it's another one. It's the abductee issue is very similar to the UFO issue back in the 40s and 50s.
Precisely.
It's just as explosive and ridiculously non-believable or unbelievable.
Yeah.
A thought that comes to mind is, are there other countries that are possibly going to leapfrog the US into disclosure? Like the Brazilian government right now has a lot of things going on. Is that a possibility, Steve?
Well, I think what you mean by leapfrog is
like
another
beat the US government into full disclosure. Like
the disclosure. No, full disclosure is not the same thing as full disclosure, which should be properly referred to as a complete revealing of everything that is in the files of the countries of the world regarding this phenomenon. That's full disclosure. Capital D disclosure, which is where we're headed and what I work for and promote, is simply it's an event. It's a confirmation event. The extraterrestrial presence is here. Is true. So once we get the confirmation event, then how much more disclosure we get after that will be a matter between the citizens of Canada and the United States and their government. One of the things that will start to get addressed after disclosure will be the contact issue. But it's not as I don't think it's going to be as bad as people think. First of all, the issue of contact has been out there for quite some time, right? There have been books, there have been movies, there have been one of the best loved skits on Saturday Night Live is about contact, right? So there's no surprises there. But in fact, let's put it this way: the government is way behind the curve. It's always been a little bit behind the curve. Now it's way behind the curve. The public is so far out in front of the government on this now that it's almost impossible for the government to shock us. All right, so we'll get a confirmation of the ET presence after a lot of military witnesses like Lou Elizondo and Fravor and Dietrich and Day and on and on and on. Oh, and Salas and the other nuclear tampering witnesses. We'll get a lot of testimony from them, which will be not particularly shocking. Again, it's all been out. The nuke tampering thing's been out for 20 years. And that's going to allow the president to confirm the ET presence. Well, then the issue is now fully legitimized. Now Avi Loeb can move Harvard forward from 1958, where he has brought it to date, meaning he got $2 million to go look for stuff up there, which is pretty much what SETI was doing. SETI programs were doing in 1958. So he's gotten Harvard to 58. Mack had tried to get Harvard into the 21st century, but they didn't like that. So Avi's getting a lot of money and a lot of attention for pretty much doing what we were already doing, but maybe with a little better technology. I'm not going to be overly critical there because he's doing something. He's actually stepped into it, given it some credence, given it some gravitas, and he's almost getting Harvard off the hook, but not completely. Harvard is going to answer for John Mack. I will see to that, all right, one way or another, all right? But so, and then the other thing is that I think we're going to be utterly stunned by how many people were fully aware that there was an extraterrestrial presence in our government, in our military, in our universities. And the reason we're going to find that out is that a lot of them are going to come forward and tell us that because they think it's cool and they want to be at the party. A number of them are going to come out and tell us that because sort of to try to mitigate the stupid quotient, meaning, yeah, I knew. I'm not stupid, right? I'm a professor. I've got a PhD, right? I can go to the libraries. I know who Stan Friedman is. And so, I didn't say anything, but there were good reasons for that. So they'll be saying that. And so everybody's going to be lining up to say, I knew. I knew when I was 12, 20, 26. I knew in college. Hell, I worked on a program. I got tipped off by my commander and whatever. The number of people in authority, in positions of importance, in our institutions that know the ET presence is real will absolutely stun you. And you go, well, if that's true, why are we doing this thing? Because, and this is my forte, this is where I come in. This is why I should be on CNN right now and the other networks, because of the truth embargo. We've been talking UFOs and UFOs and UFOs for 75 years. It took 70 years to get us to UAP, and we're still not fully there yet. Okay, it's all right. Truth embargo is still playing real long, slow catch up. But the truth embargo had more impact on American society and global society than the ETs. Now you may say, whoa, wait a minute. What do you mean? Well, they turned off our nuclear weapons. Oh, okay, fine. Yeah, they turned them on. All right, fine. The guys that were there are still kind of irritated about that. There's that. There's been a lot of abduction events, contact events, and that's affecting some people's lives, right? The truth embargo has affected every single person on the planet by subtracting that information from their worldview, by sequestering technology of God knows what significance for purely national security purposes, all right? The things we could have done, could have seen, might have avoided, the changes in geopolitical policies, some of the awful, awful things we've done since 47, and the list goes on and on and on. And that's after World War II, okay? Which is pretty nasty. But let me tell you, we've been rocking and rolling since then too. All of these things might have been affected positively if we had gotten the truth early. And so the truth embargo is the issue. The ETs are what they are. We'll learn what they are. The truth embargo is us. We instituted the truth embargo. They turned off the nukes. We instituted the truth embargo. And so that, right, is what we're trying to end right now. And that truth embargo was a policy of the United States government, brilliantly executed, thousands and thousands of moving parts involved to make it happen, worked out. It carried over into our allies, such as Canada and the UK and others, right? They went along with it. China and the Soviet Union went along with it for its own purposes. And the truth embargo is still in place 75 years later. But again, that policy was, I don't care what you think about it. I don't care what you know about it. I don't care how much research you got about it. I don't care if you're dining out with ETs every week. Just don't talk about it. Don't write about it. Don't teach it, right? Don't bother us, okay? And it'll all be okay. And so the result of that is that as we approach the end of the 75-year propaganda program of extraordinary accomplishment from the standpoint of propaganda, the number of people in this world that know the ET presence is real, in the Pentagon, in the Vatican, in the universities, everywhere, will blow your mind. And that is one of the reasons why ending this truth embargo is simply not going to be as big a deal as people think in terms of upset. Meaning, oh my God, no, it's going to be mostly, yeah, I knew. Yeah, I knew. I couldn't say anything because I wasn't allowed to. I had an agreement, or it would have caused me a problem with my job at the university. I knew. I knew, right? And then there'll be people say, I worked on a program. Yeah, I was on a program. I worked on one of the saucers. There's going to be tons of that, right? One of my jobs is to keep demystifying and I don't know, what's the word? trying to strip all the anxiety out of this, right? I mean, it is the biggest event in human history, but most of the anxiety is not about the reality of it. It's about all the misinformation and misunderstanding the government has just fed us, right? For all of these decades, that has made it very confusing and created a lot of uncertainty. But the fact is that you'll be absolutely astounded at how quickly all of the major populations of the world are taking the whole damn thing for granted within about 2 weeks after disclosure, and it's all going to be about okay.
And how can we make money off of it?
No. Oh yeah, no. First, how can we make money? Absolutely. There's going to be money. I mean, there's going to be. Oh my God, it's going to be one of the great commercial. It'll save the American economy. I'm telling you, we're going into the crapper right now. You probably may not notice it, but we really are. All the crypto people have suddenly realized. Wait a minute. This stuff is nothing but bits and ones and zeros on a hard drive that I lost in a dump like 6 months ago. It's all gonna, but in comes the ET thing, and it's like, oh my God, think of all the things that we can sell if we can attach it to the extraterrestrial issue, okay? And so, yeah, it'll probably save the economy of the world. It'll probably stop the war in Ukraine, and everybody's gonna take it for granted in 2 weeks, but we're going to have fun. We're going to be excited again. We're gonna see an interesting future. We're going to be able to stop thinking about this endless river of crap that has been flowing through pretty much the entire world for the last, I don't know, good solid 10 years, all right, that is just, it's driving people to drink, to opioids. Suicide rates are up. Mental illness is up. People are living, in fact, right outside where I'm living right now, we've got tent cities, okay, people living on the sidewalk with nothing more than a blanket. People are going to have something to look forward to. Disclosure is the absolute best thing that could happen to the world. And I'm going to say that and say that and say that until finally the politicians who are coming around are going, all right, let's get these hearings done. Let's get this done. Let's put them off, right? Let's get it done. Let's get them in here and let's move forward. Excellent.
Oh, you know what? So Chris Sharp has just joined, and I just wanted to say hi to Chris. Let's say hi. Hi, Chris. How you doing?
Hello, Chris. Hey guys. Good to see everyone. Victor, Steve, huge fans of you both. It's a true honor to be on with all you guys. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, Chris, you have a liberationtimes.org. You're out there practically a disclosure activist yourself, reporting on UAP news and anything else that can go. I know you have limited time today, right? You're only here for about 30 minutes or less.
Yes, it's a birthday meal today.
Oh, birthday?
Well, it's my birthday on Friday, but the meal's today because my wife is working.
Well, yours? Well, happy birthday if it's your birthday.
Thank you so much.
Did you also have anything to announce or anything else?
Oh, yes. So expect some more follow-up articles in Liberation Times and Daily Mail. I think either the Intelligence Authorization Act or the National Defense Authorization Act of 2023 should have some very, very positive language in there relating to immunity. And I think if that all goes well successfully, then I'm kind of expecting hearings in 2023, at least like the big kind of like hearings where you get people working for defense contractors and others who are kind of read into like the really secretive programs, speaking out about all this. But I don't know, maybe some hearings perhaps in September as well, just to keep the momentum going. But I'm expecting the real blockbuster stuff to perhaps come in 2023 once Biden signs the NDAA or IAA into law, whichever has that language.
Okay.
Do you know that there will be certain language in that NDA, or you hope that there will be certain language?
Let's just say that based on what people have said publicly, I mean, look at Gary Nolan, for instance, that, people such as Gary, they feel very, very confident about it. So that's as far as I'll go on that. But
well, I mean, there's going to be language. There's going to be language, but I mean, have they? I can't follow everything. As Victor says, it's like a fire hose. But are you saying that somebody like Gary has specifically referred to certain language they expect?
Yes, I believe so. And instead of using the word amnesty, he wants to use the word immunity. So yeah,
he said that. He said that.
Yeah, he said it on Twitter. So yeah, okay. That's interesting, and I referenced that in my latest article about Pandora's box kind of being opened as we speak.
I'm gonna have to go on UFO Twitter. By the way, I'm on UFO Twitter, folks. So like, if you're not on UFO Twitter, you should be on UFO Twitter. Okay, get it together. Hashtag UFO Twitter. It should be UAP Twitter, but there's no way I'm gonna be able to get them to switch to that at this point. So I'm gonna go with it. But it's a pretty significant thing. It is a growing mass communication process that's relatively civil. But I have a problem, and I'll mention it to Gary. I oppose the idea of amnesty and immunity now. Not post-disclosure, but now. And here's why. First of all, one, we got plenty of witnesses that want to testify, right? Plenty, right? More than enough to probably have the hearings we need to allow Biden to disclose. Right? Point two. Amnesty, as properly defined, is as defined in this case, is that it's to give somebody, well, there's a lot of misunderstanding about it, but one of the ways you do amnesty is to give somebody protection if they accidentally violate a national security directive, meaning, oops, I shouldn't have said that kind of thing, all right? Which it's not a trivial matter, but it's not that big a deal. In the minds of a lot of general public, though, amnesty means that you've been given protection because you did some really bad things. And so we want you to testify, okay? Immunity goes even further. Immunity means you've definitely done some bad things and we're immunizing. Now, this is a problem. The witnesses out there, the military witnesses, like Salas and others, and there are many more, and pilots that have had things, they do not need immunity because they've committed no crimes. And they don't need amnesty because they committed a crime. All right. And so by talking about immunity and amnesty, we are already in the public's mind putting out the idea that there's these military witnesses that have done terrible things, but we want them to testify. They got enough trouble just coming forward and testifying like Fravor has done and so forth. I mean, at least talking to the press and what have you. They got enough trouble doing that without having that stigma inappropriately attached to them. All right. So I think this is a mistake. Plus, right, when they go before the committee, a lot of people don't understand how hearings work. When they sit down before a committee, they're going to take an oath to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, on top of their original service oath. So these are double oath people. That's why these hearings would be so powerful. If at any time a member of Congress asks them a question that they cannot answer because of national security limitations and NDAs, all they will have to do is say, Senator, I can discuss that in private session, in a classified session. And that's it. Nobody's going to force them. And if somehow in the course of answering a question, they say something that, oops, that probably was classified, they're not going to get hauled up before a tribunal because of that. I assure you, it's not going to happen. Now, so my feelings on this are pretty strong. And so I'm going to be putting that out there, not just to be a pain, but because it's important. There's a lot of witnesses out there. We want to make it as easy for them to come forward. And saying that, well, they may need amnesty and immunity is not making it easy, it's making it harder. Now, once you get disclosure, in a little different situation, okay? So now we've got disclosure, and now there's a huge amount of pressure to really get to the bottom of things, all right? To learn as much as we can, all right? Okay. Truth and reconciliation will be an issue, and I will support truth and reconciliation. Now, what is that? Truth and reconciliation is while you're getting into the granular level, and you've got people that have been deep into this program for some time, and also in managing the truth embargo. And some of them may have done what would be viewed certainly outside of the national security modality as illegal. Nasty stuff, okay? And we want to know that. And so truth and reconciliation legislation would say, look, if you will come forward and discuss exactly what happened and what you did, you will be reconciled to society and you'll be okay. I am not suggesting that the amount of illegal activity even remotely compares to the activities and illegal actions of those that ran the apartheid system in South Africa, where they had a very necessary truth and reconciliation program, allowing countless members of the South African government to come forward and say they did this and they did that and they did some pretty awful things, but they were fully truthful and they were reconciled. It's not that bad, but we could use that. In terms of amnesty, even post-disclosure, once we're in there and we're getting into the granular level, right? And we're really not talking about hearings per se. Hearings, you're under oath in front of a committee. In the post-disclosure world, you're going to have the press coming at everybody, scientists and people that worked in the government. They want to interview them and so forth. And there's going to be this massive activity going on. And it's possible that somebody will talk to a reporter of the New York Times and say something. Boy, I shouldn't have said that. I think an amnesty legislation for that case would be appropriate to protect them, unless it's egregious and they really went out of their way. And that would be appropriate. It's not needed now because that kind of interviewing and that kind of enormous amount of interchanging activity is not happening. It's increasing, but it's not happening. And so my position is simple. Prior to disclosure, no immunity, no amnesty, no truth and reconciliation legislation needed, where we expect great men and women to come up and testify under oath with the normal protections that they would have. After disclosure, I think we're going to need that legislation, and it'll be a lot easier to get it. Because think about it, if you're going to the Congress right now and saying, look, we'd like some amnesty and we'd like some immunity for some witnesses. Witnesses for what? Well, the hearings, we haven't had the hearings yet, right? We're still making up our mind about that. So why are we giving, and I'm not even sure UAP is real. And so why am I going to vote for amnesty for people about a subject that isn't fully defined yet? No, it's going to be too difficult. It'll just drag it out. So we don't want to go there. As far as hearings, they should start in August. That's my call. You'll see the next hearings in August, because it is not a good idea from the standpoint of the administration, Biden, with everything that's going on. Not that he can really affect it, but the committee chairs can affect it. They understand, this is political as the president. They understand that now that they've got this ball rolling, if they drag this thing out and we don't get the hearings until next year, and so say in April of next year, whoa, the testimony is coming and oh my goodness, and there it is, and the president comes forward and says, I have to confirm to you today there's an extraterrestrial presence. A whole lot of people are going to say, excuse me, President Biden, we could have had this information last year. We just voted for 467 new members of the United States Congress, and we didn't have that information. We couldn't ask them a question about it. They didn't even discuss it. We have no idea what their position is on it. One of the most important issues in the world, and you pushed it to next year. Was that a political move on your part? Were you trying to protect your candidates from having to deal with that issue? You politicize this, okay? He's going to get crucified. I'm going to be very clear. He will totally politicize this issue. The thing is in motion. It is in motion for a lot of reasons that don't have anything to do with his party affiliation. He has a chance, and the Congress has a chance, to run this out and get the job done in a non-political way and allow the American people and the candidates to speak to the issue while they run for the congressional office. If they don't do that, it is a colossal political blunder. And I've been telling the Democrats, particularly, for like 20 years about all the damn blunders they have made, which could have allowed them to have been the disclosure party and have this thing done. But they keep making one mistake after another. And the person that made the biggest mistake of all, who really blew it right up, who had it in her hands, was Secretary Hillary Clinton. I sent her 3 open letters and said what I could say. I couldn't get on CNN. I wish I could get on CNN. Tried to get an interview with Maureen Dowd on that. Whatever. The point is that I never got it. She didn't get it. She didn't get it. And so she played it safe and she lost, right? So we can't have another mistake like that. And it's not Democrat versus Republican. If this was a Republican president, I'd be saying exactly the same thing. This thing is happening now. You had better finish it up this year. If you don't, you are going to have serious problems in 2023.
Yes, an interesting one. I mean, Peter Thiel, the billionaire who helped create PayPal with Elon Musk, he's actually funding a lot of Republican candidates, and he's holding dinners with them. And he's very, very interested in this topic, and he's making sure that the candidates he picks for the upcoming midterms are actually kind of like pro-disclosure. So it's quite interesting. It's kind of like
Really?
yeah, that's happening. There's actually an article, I can link it to you later on Politico.
Send me links, please. I have not quite picked up on it. Not on the ET stuff. I know that he's prompting them on the usual issues for of the conservatives, but I had no idea that he was bringing that up to these people that he's funding. Please,
absolutely.
Links. Thank you.
And I think the most pressing thing for Congress is, I mean, I just use this as an example to the one that I got into Daily Mail last week, the one that Corbell reported on about the events of July 2019, when hundreds of drones were harassing U.S. naval warships. And Scott Bray basically came out and said, look, these were unmanned aerial systems. However, the thing is, they don't know the origin of these craft. So Tom Rogan did an article yesterday in the Washington Examiner, basically without any sourcing or anything like that, just saying, yeah, they were Chinese unmanned aerial systems. Cool, but where do they come from? I asked Susan Goff last week. She said, Chris, I don't have a response for you on that in terms of their origin. They did not come from the Chinese cargo ship, the Bass Strait. From what my sources are telling me, that ship was actually searched. They searched the hell of that ship, and they found no drones at all. So where did they come from? They were basically in the middle of nowhere. And it's things like that. And Scott Bray basically tried to poo-poo one video that Jeremy Corbell released, basically saying it was because of the camera aperture, which made them look triangular. But he kind of misled Congress in a way, in that he didn't explain away all the other hundreds of drones, where they came from, stuff like that. And from my understanding, Congress is red hot on that right now, saying, look, you've given us tons of reports, we've seen videos, and also just to add to that, it's my understanding that those politicians that have actually been made aware of such videos and seen all the footage, their lives has changed quite profoundly. They do not see life in the same way that they did a few months before they saw such footage. But their problem is that they're seeing all this amazing footage, but not enough work is being done to show where they came from, where did they originate from, and that's the one big thing that's really playing on Congress right now. And one more thing as well, the language has already changed, so now it's not UAP in terms of what they're referring to in Congress. It's now unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena. So aerospace is both the air and space,
sure,
and on the sea as well. So they've actually now basically said, it's transmedium, and the language may change even more. I would hope that they change it to something like unidentified transmedium phenomena, and I don't know, it may be on the horizon. So,
Victor,
let me respond to that a little bit. You just brought up something which is one of the key things of how the truth embargo has survived all these 75 years. And it goes like this. All right. Let's go back to just a few years ago when you had the Tic Tac. The Tic Tac video particularly is the one that got the most attention, very profound. Not simply because there was a video, but because there was visual sighting of the thing by several of the pilots. And then the Princeton was tracking a group of something like 50 of them or something. That kind of, it wasn't one, it was more. And they were tracking them until they disappeared over, near Santa Guadalupe Island. And it was a huge event. It was massive, and everybody understood that. But guess what happens? And this has happened all the time. Okay, then some time goes by and we have another event. Some footage of some drones flying around some ships. Now, all of a sudden, the issue becomes about, can you explain that, right? And if you can't explain that, then basically the issue is just step back, you see? It's just step back, right? Now, we're sort of back to, in other words, the Tic Tac thing was really huge, but let's just put that aside for now and see if we can explain these drones. And if we can't explain these drones, well, I guess we're still kind of in the dark. This has happened over and over again. It's like you can, look, if 5 saucers on the ground were seen by an entire tactical group, then it saw them straight up, and they had it on film, and that got in the New York Times, 6 months later there'd be some another event, and people would be going, yeah, well, forget about that thing they filmed a while back. What about this? We can't think. In other words, the truth embargo has basically got things worked out where you have to keep proving it over and over and over and over and over again. And if you've proven this, so what? You got to prove this next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. And therefore, you really never get to the finish line. It's like that famous paradox. The way you finish a race is you get halfway there, and then you get halfway there again, and you get halfway there again. Therefore, how do you ever actually get there, right? And so, and this drives me crazy, but it's part of the deal. So I watch all this stuff and all the foo-fa about these drones, and or what they were and what they couldn't be, and all the stuff, and the Chinese and everything else. Hey, what about the Tic Tac? The damn thing would go for 80,000 feet straight down to the ocean and stopped on a dime. Have we forgotten that? Right? Why don't we just focus on that? So again, this time around, this kind of stuff is not going to stop the process. In other words, we will fiddle with that, and it'll be all worked over on UFO Twitter, but the rest of the stuff is going to be revisited. It's not going anywhere. The nuclear weapons tampering witnesses, by the way, those events happened in 67, 66, and later, right? They've been brought forward repeatedly in the last 25 years, books, video, and it's like, that's kind of a big deal, Got a bunch of triangle thingy flying around a ship off of San Diego. What about the nukes being turned off? And so we're always having to go to the next thing. I don't play that game. I have no interest in playing that game. All right, let's get back to the really incredible stuff is the reason why these witnesses should be testifying. And by the way, one just did. The first member of the United States military to ever testify on an incident under oath, but it was in Brazil. It was the Brazilian Senate, right? Could have been the Canadian Senate, right? Why didn't you get them? Why'd you let Brazil get the guys before you did? Victor. You gave it a shot. I know you tried. But you think they might be willing to follow Brazil and have Bob coming up and maybe chat with them since the U.S. is tied up?
Well, I'm already in communication with the member of Parliament, Larry McGuire, who has, that's another issue altogether, who has been investigating and brought forward flyovers by unidentified aerial craft over at least 3 and possibly 6 nuclear facilities here in Canada. By nuclear facilities, I mean a nuclear energy facility, because we don't have any, ICBM installations here. He has definite information through a lot of investigative work by another Canadian ufologist that these craft have in fact flown over nuclear facilities, nuclear energy facilities here in Canada. He brought this thing forward in May to a deputy minister here in Canada. And as a result of all of that, the fur is starting to fly with respect to the communication between Canada and the United States with respect to UFOs, UAP, whatever you want to call them, flying over nuclear installations, which kind of dovetails into what Steve just talked about in terms of what Bob Salas testified about in Brazil. So the office of Larry McGuire, who's a member of Parliament here in Canada, has lit a fire that has gone right to the Atomic Energy Commission here in Canada, who at first did not want to even consider the issue, but now they're beginning to exchange information with their American counterparts with respect to these unknown craft over Canadian installations. So that's a story that's unfolding here in Canada. I'm following it very closely, and I've spoken to individuals, the lead staffer in Larry McGuire's office, and they're not done with this yet. Because it's now become embedded not only in Larry McGuire's office, but he has been able to incorporate the support of 2 or 3 other members of Parliament, other Conservative members of Parliament, and another NDP member of Parliament, who are totally committed to finding out what the hell is going on. And they've been asking questions not only of the Deputy Minister in the Natural Resources Committee, but also the Minister of Natural Resources here in Canada. And when he was confronted by this information, he didn't know his ass from page one. He just didn't know what to say. He had no idea what Marco Rubio and Mark Warner had done. Not a clue about that. So and to reflect back to what Steve said, I mean, so many politicians are so far behind the curve that they think this stuff is all new. So this is an unfolding event here in Canada that we're following very, very closely. And I might add that CTV, Canada's #1 media entity here across Canada, is following this very, very closely. And they've interviewed the minister, the deputy minister. They've interviewed Larry McGuire. They've also interviewed Luis Elizondo. So they're all over this. And this is something that's brewing on the back burner here in Canada very, very strongly.
What is the equivalent of congressional committees in Canada? What do they have?
Congressional committees, that would be, there's a whole hierarchy. Each ministry, let's say you take the Ministry of Defense or the Ministry of Natural Environment or Ministry of Immigration, whatever. Each of those ministries could hold their own hearings or investigations or whatever you want to call them on their own. And then there's the ultimate form of investigation, which is called a Royal Commission. That would be something that's probably the top of the heap of the kinds of things that the Canadian government could institute to investigate something like this. So you've got it at the ministerial level. They can hold hearings, or they could call whatever you want to call them, and then you'd move to the next level if it got serious enough to what's called a Royal Commission. And that's a big deal. So that that would be the next step if in fact that would be the case.
When these ministries hold hearings, do they require an oath? Do people take an oath when they testify?
Not necessarily. No, not necessarily. No.
But they could.
They could. Oh, yes. They could subpoena people if the issue is serious enough. They could subpoena people to testify. If the committee is constituted in a way that becomes a legal process, they could be demanding of an oath at that time, so that witnesses could, if they're brought forward to the committee, would have to testify under oath.
Now, in committees in Canada, like you're talking about, do they have chairs?
Yeah.
Is there a chairman that's assigned whenever they do a hearing, or do they just assign whoever they want?
No, each ministry would be able to develop or put together a committee. This is what Larry McGuire did. He is the vice chair of the Natural Resources Committee, and the chair is another person altogether. But Larry McGuire was the person who instituted this interview, if you wanted to say it in a proper way, of the Minister of Natural Resources, and he threw all kinds of questions at him. Now, this was just an informal committee gathering, not a hearing necessarily. And Larry McGuire threw all of these questions at the deputy minister about these UAP hovering over these nuclear installations. And it really holds no particular weight at this point right now. But the fact that the Minister of Natural Resources, John Hannaford, has now gotten involved in this at another level, that means that not only does the Commission for Atomic Energy here in Canada have to become involved, because these things are over nuclear installations here in Canada, and this commission has oversight of these commissions. So what you've got is a political entity meshing its information with the Canadian Atomic Energy Commission. So you've got these two sources, independent sources, having to come forward to talk about what these UAP might be. And they don't have any answers about this, and they're all stick handling around it.
Are you in contact with McGuire? Are you in direct contact with him?
I've not spoken to Larry McGuire personally, but I have spoken to Drew, his staff assistant, and Drew and I have had at least 5 conversations about where this is all going. And he has been commandeering. Let me tell you also that this individual named Drew is so plugged into this issue, Steve. I've never met a young person. He's probably in his early 30s. I have not plugged into any person at a staff level within the office of a member of parliament who knows more about this stuff and possibly exceeds the knowledge of just about anybody that I know at that level. This guy is plugged into everything. And my sense is that this individual has been feeding Larry McGuire information about the UAP issue for a long, long time. And all the conversations that I've had with him have indicated that is in fact the case. And so it's moving forward, and I don't know where it's going to go, but the fact that CTV is now covering it, it's in the media, and it's moving forward. So, it'll just be a matter of time before Larry McGuire maybe goes to the floor of the House of Commons and raises this issue in what they call question period, where any member can stand up as a position of privilege and ask the government a question on any issue that they want. That's called question period. So
we need a hearing. We need a hearing up there.
Well,
so,
yeah. Well, first,
what would prevent you? Well, not prevent you. Look, Salas's testimony in Brazil was on. You got it. You got it. Right? Okay. It's on. You can actually pull it. Rip it off of YouTube. Whatever you got to do. Right. I do it all the time. And why not do that? Send it to Drew, and say, look, this gentleman, Robert Salas, would be more than happy, I assure you, to come to Canada and also testify to their committee. That's what's going to get some attention. Brazil got a lot of attention out of this.
You bet.
This was a worldwide deal.
Yeah, the thing is, Steve, I've spoke to Robert Salas, was just after Larry McGuire came forward with his first interview. And Robert and I had a long discussion about, Victor, I'll fly up there on my own dime.
Sure.
To talk to Larry McGuire. So Robert is very, very interested and very willing to come forward. It's just a matter of time, I think, before Larry McGuire, in concert with whoever the Deputy Minister of Natural Resources might concede, to have some sort of either briefing with Larry McGuire and John Hannaford and the Minister of Natural Resources. Okay, that's one thing, and be made very clear that Larry McGuire has had an actual briefing with Luis Elizondo. So this is something that Larry McGuire is trying to get ahead of, and I'm quite sure that at some point, and if I can convince Larry McGuire through Drew's office to get Robert Salas up here, it'll happen. That would be the beginning of something that the Natural Resources Committee could really deal with, and then eventually call some sort of hearing or inquiry into this whole thing. So, the Brazil thing with Robert Salas is a big deal. And now that Larry McGuire knows that
he knows about it. He knows about Brazil.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if I were him, I'd just tell him, look, how many countries do you want to wait to go first before Canada gets involved? You're not a potted plant up there.
That's right.
Brazil is way down there. You're just across the border, unless, and I know that this happens, Canada's for various reasons, a little more concerned about upsetting its neighbor to the south, doing something that would step on some toes. I wish they would stop that. I'd say the same thing for the UK. That may be a factor, it may not. But
knowing Larry McGuire, he sticks within the rails of everything. But then, from what I understand through Drew, this individual in his office, once Larry has information, it stops from going this way. It just opens up that way, and that's been his pattern of investigation. And he's very, very clear about his affront to the deputy minister, saying, "You didn't know about this stuff. You are a minister of the crown, and you don't know about this." And the minister said absolutely and very clearly he had no idea. So that gives McGuire more impetus to say, we are so far behind the curve on an official level here. What more can we do to invest ourselves in becoming more attuned to sharing information with the United States, and not only doing something in terms of sharing, but also become our own initiative to, as you say, Steve, to create some sort of venue for some sort of hearings or a royal commission into this whole issue. That could be the next step. And now that he's got some bipartisan support from the NDP, the New Democratic Party, as well as other conservative members of Parliament, he could have some people rattling cages that could create some really serious interventions within the Canadian Parliament. That's my assessment. He's not going to stop here right now. That's my take on it.
Bob is 83, soon to be 84. Several of the other witnesses have died. We got Rubio, Diego, Gillibrand. We got Burchett saying, yeah, the extraterrestrials. That's what they are. They're extraterrestrials. He said it on News Nation, and so there's plenty of platform for Canada to step into this. I don't know how much more they need, but they would get a lot of attention, and he would get a lot of attention by not some huge thing. Just bring up Bob to speak to the appropriate committee, right? The one that he chairs, naturally, that's fine, and tell his story. It'll be worldwide news, right? And it's not going to burn anybody, and Trudeau can decide if he wants to get involved or not. But just having Bob up there is actually a big deal. They have been dancing on this issue for a long time, and I've always felt that the United States has not been well served by two super allies like Canada and UK being so damn subservient to us. By being subservient so much, they have, I guess you could say, made it a little easier for us to get away a lot of stupid nonsense.
Well, on that note, Steve, since you were talking about the UK, our friend in the UK, Christopher Sharp, needs to get going, and I just wanted to say bye to him. But real quick, Christopher, do you have any final thoughts?
Yes. Firstly, on UK, loose lips sink ships, and from my understanding, UK does not want this out. The UK does not want this topic out. I need to look further into it, but that was told to me by Tim McMillan. But I'm usually very, very guarded with my language, but I will say now is the time to get excited. AIMSG, for the record, has been a complete failure. From my understanding, staff numbers are still in the single digits. And now I think that Congress is going to go after the legacy programs, crash retrievals and whatnot, and that's what we can expect from hearings. And as I wrote in my last article, one big revelation from any hearing can change the world forever. And according to my sources, that one big revelation may already be inevitable. So it's time to get excited, and lots of things coming in the upcoming weeks and months, including from Liberation Times and Daily Mail.
Yes, Chris. So again, let everyone know where you can be found real quick before you go.
Sure. So www.liberationtimes.com. Then I'm on Twitter as well as Chris UK Sharp, SHARP. And then also you can find my stuff on the Daily Mail as well from time to time. So
and definitely check that July 1st article you just wrote. That was a good article. Victor, I see you have something to say.
Chris, very quickly, Chris. I know you've been speaking with Susan Goff. You need to be very careful about that woman.
Yes,
okay?
Yes. I've got
very careful about that woman.
Yeah, I've got to be very, very careful what I say. It's kind of one of those things you really have to balance out. But I hear you on that. I hear you.
Well, she accused Luis Elizondo of having nothing to do with the ATIP program. He was not the executive director. He was not the director of security. And Luis Elizondo and Danny Sheehan went to Washington, D.C. and sat in the offices before several lawyers of the Office of the Inspector General and told the Inspector General's lawyers to get Susan Goff off Luis Elizondo's back and stop lying about it. I'm being very frank about that. They spent 4 hours doing that. So anything that comes out of Susan Goff's mouth, as far as I'm concerned, is obfuscation, misdirection, and a shell game. So with that, I just need to caution you about it.
Yeah, I'll add actually that there's the accusation there that she was working with Gary Reid and they were working together on responses before they were sent out. She's always got plausible deniability though, because her line will always be, well, before I send out any public statement that goes to press, it needs sign off, and I get the information from someone else. So whether it's Gary Reid or one of the other heads, she gets the information, quotes from them, then she gets sign off from whoever she needs sign off from. She's always got that plausible deniability. It will be very interesting though to see what comes in the upcoming months in terms of the IG investigation, because a complaint, like you said, has been made against her. But yeah, interesting times. But yes. Thank you so much both, and yeah, I'm a really big fan of you guys, and hopefully we can all work together. And
great work, Chris. Great work.
No, thank you.
Keep it up. Keep it up.
And Victor, I saw your comment on July 2019 since just like painting the press. I think what we were doing there, we were just taking quotes from the sailors. They didn't know if it was Chinese, whatever. And they were just seeing things like from a warfighter's capability. That was all. But we're not saying like UAP per se is a threat or anything. But there's also the definition within like language used by the military as well. There's kind of like perceived threat in terms of like capability and whatnot. But then there's hostile intent. That's when they can start firing. But
I just thought I'd volunteer my 2 cents worth here. I didn't know 2 cents in Canada is not worth $1.50 in the UK, but I just thought I'd put it forward.
Oh well, thank you so much, guys.
Rubles. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much, and I'll speak to you guys soon. Take care, and thank you for having me on, guys. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Chris. Have a great day. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
So we've got Victor in the UK. We've got a number of people that are activists. I'm sorry, in Canada. A number of people that are activists in the UK. We've got Ross Coulthart, who is becoming the guy in Australia. So that, the axis of Anglo-Saxonness is, I think, nicely prepared and ready to move forward aggressively. But there's also things happening in many other countries. This is becoming increasingly a global movement, glued together by the internet, by social media and what have you. And so again, anybody who has any illusions inside of our Department of Defense or anywhere else in our government that thinks we can kick this can down the road a little bit longer, they're mistaken. It's not going to happen.
How realistic do you really feel like that? How close disclosure could be? I mean, it's obvious things are moving, so we got the baby steps. But because earlier you were talking about how Biden could be looking at this, he could say that, but for me, I just still feel like it's years and years away. But I guess I don't know. You guys, please.
You have to look at the whole history, right? We were doing baby steps from 70s and the 80s and the 90s. What's happened in the last 5 years are not baby steps. These are massive strides. Okay,
I stand corrected. Thank you.
These strides that we have made were triggered by the To the Stars Academy group. The key people being Elizondo and Mellon. All right, they were the key people. The rest are not trivial, but and they're still doing something. They still have an organization, but it's Mellon and Elizondo. So they start this whole process, and of course, the gun camera footage and the New York Times articles was part of the deal. And so we have been making these strides, in spite of the fact that the American political system basically blew up. I mean, it blew up. It froze up, locked down. I mean, it's I don't know. You got people jumping over the side of the ship right now, ship of state. That happened, right? Scandal upon scandal upon scandal, chaos. And then we had the worst pandemic in modern history in terms of sheer numbers, the worst in all of human history, just that, right, which we weren't prepared for. We do have lots of nuclear submarines and nuclear bombers and hypersonic missile testing going on, but we didn't have any hand sanitizers or enough masks or ventilators. We were shy on that. So you might say that we have a priority problem. Anyway, the point is, in spite of all that, the pandemic, and then, of course, Putin's war in the Ukraine, which is really basically Hitler's war in Poland is what it is. It's just a little harder to keep pressing on. Okay, but I assure you it's basically exactly the same thing, only he's accusing them of being the Nazis, whereas the Nazis were accusing Poland of being, not Nazis. The point is that if it wasn't for these extraordinary historical phenomena, we'd already be probably 2 years into the post-disclosure era. If Clinton had won, we'd have been in the post-disclosure era in early 2017.
Good point. Yeah, good point. I guess you know what?
Way closer than you might suspect.
Yeah, I guess what I keep thinking of is just, it's been 70 years and we know that the military has gone to I don't want to say the military because it makes it sound like the terrestrial military everyone knows, but it's the special access military, and the contractors have done so much to keep this a secret, even possibly, I don't know. I don't want to go on the possibly taking people out type of thing, but either way, it just seems like the dark military, or whatever we want to call them, it has so much riding on the line because, as you say, there's possible off-world stuff that's been going on for decades, and and there's just
or not. That's not proven to my satisfaction.
True. Okay. Yeah. But either way, I guess that's where I'm going with it. It just seems like there's so much on the line, so much they've kept secret, especially when it comes to crash retrievals and so forth. But yeah. Talk me off the edge,
That's
Steve.
always been the case. That's always been the case. They've always had all those secrets, starting with Roswell. So the fact that they have secrets is not the criteria to assess how close we are to disclosure. That's still the same. They've always had this.
Yeah.
It's everything else that's happening. And I should point out is, and a lot of people have forgotten this, but one of the original 10 people on the board of the To the Stars Academy that came forward publicly was Steve Justice, was a director of the Skunk Works. Okay, so in terms of the, how would you say, the civilian, stuff, the classified civilian stuff, he basically was on there. He was the flag for that. His being on there, and he hasn't done much since, by the way. That doesn't surprise me. Early on, they had some meetings, and he was involved, but he stepped back. But basically, the whole TTS thing was far more organized, thought out than people think. It wasn't something they just threw together to have some fun. So Justice is on there, and by being on there, he is sending a message to those that are paying attention that the government contractor, the civilian government contractors operating under national security programs with full classification status are on board. Okay, the Skunk Works is on board. They're all on board. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't some company out there who's going, oh boy, if we get disclosure, we may not get that F-99 jet, the one that can disappear, whatever the hell. There's always a little of that. But overall, they're not that important. What's important is the larger processes and the larger things developing. And what's developing is that a critical mass of people within the entire complex, running from civilian contractors through the CIA, into the DOD, into the DID, into the ONI, and on, have come to the conclusion that it is now in the best interest of the country to end the truth embargo.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And now the problem is to do it. Okay, I'm not saying it's easy, but deciding it's time to do it, hey, that's a big step. And now they need to do it. And my job is to try to explain to people how they're going about it, why they're going about it, why they're having to take their time, why they can't be fully forthright, and to not get too upset and anxious about it, and not put too many, don't get on their back too hard. Let them, there was you're winning. So let's win, right? But there are a lot of people out there that they want to kind of run them through a gauntlet, meaning, okay, you're gonna run to the finish line, but here we're gonna smack you with a baseball bat on the way. No, get out of their way and let them do it, right? They're trying to end the truth embargo, believe it or not, right? I have a lot of contact with Danny Sheehan. I know lots going on down there. Look, I assure you, Danny Sheehan would be having meetings with all the heads of all the departments of the Inspector General's office of the DOD. He's not just in there to get Susan Goff or Gow, whatever his name is, off of Elizonde's back, right? This is the IG's office of the DOD. Go back to 1960, 1969, and even conceive of that, right? In other words, I want to keep reminding people, don't get too dragged down into the minutiae and the sideshows and the latest event. Oh, did you see those flares off of San Diego? Well, we have got to prove whether they were flares or not, or we can't have hearings yet. Oh, please, give me a break. Who gives a damn about the stupid lights off of San Diego?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So, and that's been my job, and I'm enjoying the hell out of it. I got to tell you, I love it.
Well, we certainly need you guys, you and Victor, doing this job because, there's still hundreds of questions on Reddit. The simple question, well, why don't they just disclose now? What's holding them back? And that's what you're here for, is to give us those answers.
It's not easy to do the big stuff. You know how long it took us to declare war against the Nazis? It took a long time. Wow. You want to know why? Because there was a lot of political resistance in the United States about declaring war against the Nazis. It was like, that's Europe. Don't worry about it. It's no big deal. Maybe send them some ships or something, but we don't want to get in a land war in Europe. And we had people marching up and down. One of the most famous people in the United States, Lindbergh, was out there running for president, basically saying we have to stay out of that war. It took a long time to get to the point where we needed to declare war, because these kinds of things are incredibly complicated. They affect all kinds of people and institutions and what have you. And so you just can't rip it off, particularly, and in this case, it's worse than declaring war on Germany, which was basically a decision of, are we going to go to Europe or not go to Europe? Are we going to be nationalists or are we going to be internationalists? This is about ending a 75-year lie in which the government had to do things, not just for a couple of years, but for decades and decades. And now they're going to have to come out from under that. And it's really tough, public relations wise. It's brutal. Compare it to the Vietnam lie. They lied for a couple of years about Vietnam, gave us the wrong information to keep getting those troops coming over. And we found out about it. And we were pretty angry about it, but let's face it, we moved on very quickly and nobody was held accountable. That's how we roll here. But essentially, that lie was about something that had been happening over a period of 4 or 5 years. And it came out and it was known and we moved on. This is about a lie that's 75 years long and it gets into the nuclear weapons issue and everything else. And so many people have had to participate in this lie. And essentially, the Pentagon Papers was about a limited number of people in the Defense Department, as well as Westmoreland, giving us poor information. The truth embargo has involved thousands of people that have had to support it one way or another. And so ending it let's just end it. No, it has to be an orderly process. So it doesn't create more problems than it solves. I have sympathy to this. Not everybody does, and I appreciate that. That's why I'm going to try to mitigate people's anxiety by sort of explaining to them the reasons why it's taking as long as it has. Nobody wants it faster than me, but they're actually trying to do this. I swear to God, they want to end the truth embargo. This isn't a ruse. It's not a diversion, right, to get us distracted. I assure you, they want to end this damn thing. They see all kinds of political wonderfulness that'll come from it. You've got members of Congress now competing to see who can say the more aggressive thing about the ET issue. Who thought that would ever happen?
Mm-hmm. Victor?
Yeah, just to kind of reflect upon what Steve is saying is that the need to do this is rooted in something a little bit more, I guess, a little different than what Steve is saying. The perspective that I have is from a sociological point of view, and it's what's happening is a result of living under a regime in the United States, I guess, and a culture of lies. That's the whole idea behind this. Not just with respect to the UAP issue, but the United States government, along with a lot of its allies, have developed this whole thing of keeping information from the general public. That's the way they operate. That's just what they do. They're not there to be democratic necessarily in all of the things that they do. They are there to keep information secret, to secretize anything that will influence political thrust. And that was demonstrated very, very clearly by the Project for the New American Century, written by Paul Wolfowitz. Once that document came out, that was a bookmark in American history that says that the United States will seek dominancy in all aspects of international affairs. And once that happened, what Steve calls the truth embargo became a sidecar to all of that. And that sidecar of lies has perpetuated itself, and we're living as a result of it. So that no longer can people talk about, different issues around the dining room table with respect to the UAP issue or other things. The dominant thrust of what the United States has been involved in is lying to its people. And Steve is one of the people that I know put this sign up on one of his on one of the hotels. He said, "How did you put it, Steve? Constitutionally, governments have always been given the right to keep secrets from their people, but they've never been given permission to lie to their people." And that's what's happened. That's in fact what has happened.
I would hedge that a little bit. There is
let me finish first. Let me finish, and
okay,
you can hedge as much as you want. But the result of living in a household, be it a democracy or your own household, that's perpetrated by lies, is caustic. And we all know that. the caustic nature of lies changes people, changes their perceptions, changes their perception of who's in control, changes perceptions of what they believe. So that has been the dominant culture of the United States of America. Now they're trying to foist this issue of national security, which is in fact a lie. Okay. Now, on top of that, what is happening to the overall a dominant feeling that we as a human species own this issue, irrespective of the political nature of this? We as a human species own this as our own. We are a human species. We own this issue. So it is our right, it is our obligation to deal with whoever the hell these extraterrestrials are at a species level. What do you want? Why are you here? And talk to us. So has there been any kind of dominant feeling that the human species has to rectify this situation by initiating some sort of diplomatic contact, in addition to any kind of political reference internationally or with respect to the United States? This is something that's not being examined fully. Diplomatic relations, diplomatic interchange, or discourse with these extraterrestrials is in fact possible, as shown by the contact issue. So we need to move in that direction rather than live in the results of the culture of lies that's been developed mainly because of the United States and their allies. I'll stop there. You can continue to hedge, Steve, if you want.
Well, it's not hedge. The only thing I was going to add was that I think that within the National Security Act and so forth, some lying would be considered legal, but they've abused it. There's no question. But let me generalize it a little bit. One of the, and so much of these issues keeps coming back to the nuclear weapons issue. It's almost like it's at the center of everything.
You're right. Yes.
But the circumstances in the world today is that we have 10 nuclear powers, 9 for sure, probably 10. And every one of these nuclear powers has a very substantial intelligence operation, very significant. You have other nations that have significant intelligence capabilities and utilize them. Everybody does to a degree, but the 9 clearly have got, even a small nuclear power, Israeli, nobody underestimates their intelligence capabilities. Mm. So the nuclear situation, this imminent constant threat of annihilation, has given full justification to these 9 nations at minimum to be very, very aggressive in their national security policies, meaning we'll do what we want, when we want, where we want, and how we want. And if you have a problem with that, we're sorry, but hey, we're trying to prevent nuclear war here. We're trying to prevent annihilation of the civilization, and so we're going to do what we have to do. It gave them a license, literally, to do anything, and that license has been abused in almost every one of the countries. Probably the worst abuse would have to be North Korea, but it's a small country. But you can't get more abusive than North Korea, God knows. But everyone has been a victim of this. Canada, the UK, France, you name it, Israel, us, whatever. This thing, this nuclear weapons thing, which the ETs have pointed out to us now repeatedly, and that's one of the most important things they do, is at the core of the fundamental abuse of secrecy and intelligence operations. It just justifies. And on top of that, they had the ET issue in play in 47. So from the standpoint of the hardcore people in the middle, in the center of all this, the ones that are making the decisions, based upon the nuclear threat and the fact that ETs are here, they pretty much felt, hey, we got to protect the world from whatever the hell is going on here. We're going to do whatever we want to do, and we're fully comfortable with it. Nobody's going to have any guilt. This has developed this massive, what I would call, military intelligence international complex, which has the finest equipment you can imagine and has unbelievable surveillance capabilities. They can communicate with each other sub rosa. In other words, hell, all 10 of them could be playing, chess with each other and exchanging birthday cards, as far electronic birthday cards. Who knows? Then we have the above ground standard diplomatic contacts. But what about the interchanges and contacts between these intelligence communities, the Israelis and the UK and here? Hell, it's been well known that our intelligence community at the deepest level has a pretty vigorous dialogue going on with Russia, right? And probably China as well. This creates this strange situation where you have this almost completely underground world, secret, classified, literally underground, operating all the time. And as we move forward in the 20th century, now the 21st century, more and more of the billions of people on this planet have figured it out. They've come to understand it, and they don't like it, and they don't trust it. And this has been core to the diminishment of trust in governments around the world. And this is a bad thing, because today, regular people have lots of arms. We have 600 million weapons in the United States. We're armed to the teeth. You don't have to be a member of the military. And you've got terrorist groups and NGOs. So just regular people who are increasingly distrustful of government are heavily armed. Now, that's not going to end well, is it? It's not going to end well at all. And this is, I don't have the easy answer to that, other than that the end of the truth embargo might start to improve the distrust, and also maybe start to mitigate the abuse of secrecy and power that these 9 nuclear countries have become addicted to.
Victor?
Well, no, I can't disagree with what Steve is saying. I think that one other thing about the nuclear issue that I think Danny Sheehan has articulated in one of the interviews that I had. And by the way, Danny and Steve have both been interviewed on my Zland Communications files of the Disclosure Agency. If you want to listen to some really good articulation about this issue, I would ask you to go there. In any case, what Danny's perspective on the nuclear issue, and a lot of other people is that as long as we as an international community retain this obsession with nuclear weapons, we are going to be exercising our right to become part of any kind of international, of any kind of cosmic community that's out there. As long as we retain this nuclear fixation that we have, these ETs are going to quarantine us and say, listen, once you get that settled among you,
Right.
you know, let us know, okay? But right now, if you continue, sucking on that tit for that much longer, you're going to be in big trouble, and we're not going to let you leave your solar system. And we're not going to let you engage with other parts of the cosmos with these weapons of destruction, because we know how dangerous they are. We know of other civilizations who have annihilated themselves because of nuclear weapons, because the planet Earth is not the only Earth. It's not the only planet that's undergone this. Take that as a fact. We're just one little, pollywog in the swamp. They've gone through this before with other civilizations, and they know for sure that nuclear weapons are not the answer to any of the questions that we deal with. So we've got to deal with that, and once we deal with it as an international community, I think maybe, just perhaps, we might be able to open a gateway of narrative or discourse with these civilizations and say, okay, it's time to talk. We've dealt with this issue. We know that the warnings have been sent to us about the shutdown of the missiles, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, now it's time to talk. We are going to do something about the nuclear weapons, but how do you get the 9 countries that Steve alluded to agree upon anything with respect to stepping away from or some sort of denuclearization program? That to me is a very, very big question.
Well, there's one thing that could do it, and that would be open contact. Disclosure will not be sufficient. It'll be open contact, and they'll actually tell us. The one absolute key question that has to be answered and will get answered, that we can only speculate about now. And it's really quite simple. And if I had 10 ETs in front of me right now, 5 different civilizations, and I had only one question to ask them, it would be very straightforward. Why did you turn off our nuclear weapon? What was the reason for this? That answer, when we finally get it, is going to be maybe the most important thing we're going to learn. I have a couple of ideas about why, but of course I don't know for sure. But we need to know that, and I think we will in fact get that answer. We will get it from them in open engagement. Mm-hmm. I think 2 years from disclosure. And because the nuclear situation is only getting worse, not better, that's why we need the hearings. We need disclosure as soon as possible, because I think open contact is dependent on getting disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Disclosure first, open contact next. So it's open contact, disclosure, open contact, and then the question is going to come up.
Yeah.
Why did you turn off the weapons? And they're going to tell us why.
Yeah.
And then we're going to decide what to do about that. Now, I know that sounds like science fiction, but as far as I'm concerned,
No, not at all, Steve. Not
it's
at
on
all.
the menu, right?
Not to us.